One, two, three, four.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Dan Sixsmith. So glad to be back with you. I haven't been doing as many of these days, so it's almost a treat when we have a great guest like the one today. Bruno Bertini, the CMO at 8x8 is with us. Bruno, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. Looking forward to it. So let's just jump in. Give us a sense of your current role today, what you're tackling and some of the changes and challenges. And, as a modern day CMO,
Yeah,
what's up there for you?
that's that's the question. I'm like, I'm still trying to tell my mom and my dad. Anyway, it's a good question. So I've been here 8x8 at this point, almost 16 months. Um, 8x8 is a communications provider that is moving from traditional unified communications, which is helping business with phone lines and video and internal collab, to becoming a much stronger provider into contact center or customer experience with communication APIs that go into systems, contact center, messaging, AI, a lot of that bigger portfolio of business communications, and basically all the solutions that can help companies connect better with their customers and connect better with their employees. So my job here is, and basically the reason why I kind of took this job, um, how do you help a company that's public, that's close to $700 million, go back into growth and expand into different markets, moving from one product into a category of products as we go? How do we ramp and basically retool the engine of the airplanes or the engines of the plane as we fly? And honestly, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of long nights. Been growing a lot, learning a lot. It's been a good ride.
Love it. Let's talk about, there's this kind of notion and concept of, we've talked about storytelling. That's a big passion of mine, but talk a little bit about brand, in B2B. I came out of the B2C world, spent a number of years working in the agency space. And, I'm still waiting for B2B brands to kind of catch up a little bit, but talk a little bit about 8x8 as a brand, how you're handling the kind of concept of, engaging emotionally with your buyers, and how important storytelling is and how you do it.
Yeah, you're asking some good questions, huh? Like, cheers to that. So, if you look back into my way of seeing the world, I was always a B2B guy. I've been a consultant, I've been in sales, I've did a lot of different things, but I've always been I was very close to the customer. So I spent a lot of time with customers in my life, at least in our space, right? So I was always very passionate about how B2C touches customers and touch ourselves in a very personal way, in a way that you either love it or hate it on the fly. So as I was building my career as a marketer, and then, I was head of growth for a lot of time, helping companies grow, I was always very, very interested in how would I tackle that when I had the chance to put these things together as a CMO. So the story for us, it's not only a story of building a brand, but also our space is a very commoditized space. You have tectonic forces like Zoom and Microsoft and a lot of players that are all there, but they're also at the very standard of the B2B. I call it the boring to boring space, because everyone is saying the same thing, which is my engine is the biggest engine of the planet. I don't have a V8, it's a V37 cylinders, and it's all about me, 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 me. So one of the things that I try to tackle, and we've been working very hard on, is first of all, how can this be the complete reverse of this is not about me. This is about you, Mr. Customer, and what I do for you, which is elevate. A lot of customers do that when they do customer marketing, but then when they go back to their core value prop, it's again me, me, me. Number one is how can we really make the customer the center of that messaging? That's number one. And the number two is I'm a little bit the underdog, meaning I don't have the biggest budgets. I'm also the, you know, earlier in career CMO. So if you add all of those things together, we got to be brave. We got to do something that
Mm,
sparks attention. And the way to do that is if I'm bringing the customer to the center of the equation, how can we make that in a very human way? How can our brand stand out from a color palette perspective, from a voice and tone perspective, but also from a narrative that people go to my website right now and they click on a photography that's a very challenging photography. When they look at
hmm
my narrative, I'm like, my job as the value prop is to make my CX and IT leaders successful. That's my marketing promise. You don't see a lot of customers or a lot of software companies, I should say, making that type of promise. Um, so that's where we're going. Very, very standard on the user or on our buyers. Highly human, highly energized and fluid and modern. Um, and you know, we've been getting really good feedback. We've been amping up our awareness really fast. I wish we had more budget to go even crazier, even
hmm
bigger, but we'll get there.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. It's even in B2B, right? I mean, buying is emotional. You know what I mean? Whether it's I just did a keynote at one of our customers um sales kickoff, and I was basically saying like whether it's, a Diet Coke, a Tesla, or a piece of software, there's such an emotional component to it. So how do you engage, right? And the other thing, Bruno, is so much of the in B2B, boring to boring, which is fabulous. I can't believe that that's a great one. Can't let that one go.
Thank you.
In B2B, so much of this whole process happens without a seller,
Yeah.
right? So they want self-service, right? And they want to have a story and to engage and to be able to, and for you to be able to differentiate. So I really I congratulate you on that.
I
Um,
also think then
yeah.
where our kind, when I say our kind, marketers, the CMOs, have failed to explain this story is why there's this big duality between performance marketing and brand marketing and all of that. Like, it's basically if you operate downwards funnel, you're going to pay high acquisition costs because they don't know you or they're looking for something that's much more specific. And that's why
Mm,
performance marketing will always be performance marketing. But if you
hmm
slowly amp up that narrative backwards down to until they don't know you, until they're not looking for it, not only your conversions go up, but you're well known. You're a company that people are aware. So I think in B2B, it's pretty hard to build those integrated funnels in a way that we can you can make sense of the rationale to say, well, I put $1 here on Google down funnel, I get ads. I put $1 here earlier in awareness funnel, I get, you know, $1.37 down there. I think we were never able to tell this story to boards, to companies, to CFOs, to CEOs this way. And I think if you build the rationale in that way, and you build, of course, you got to have the right storytelling, the right narrative, the right product market fit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But where do you fish and where you deploy your
Yeah.
strategy, I think goes a long way.
Yeah. 100%. So how do you think the profile of the CMO is changing in B2B today?
Um, so I think it's an interesting question, and there's a lot of buzz happening on a lot of channels on LinkedIn and a lot.
Mm.
If you hear snoring, it's not me, it's my golden doodle on the right. You can see his head a little bit there. So
We love it.
I'll give him a nudge if he starts to
Bring him
kind of.
in. Yeah. Let's see what
Um,
he thinks about the CMO profile.
I'm sure he's gonna say he spends a lot of time on
Y-
calls. That's
You're
what.
his favorite. That's for sure.
So I think the profile is changing because I believe that marketing should be in service of the organization. It's not just sales. It's not just product. I think it's the glue that puts together a good product, a good sales. And I believe it needs to have a seat at a table at the C level as a tool and a lever to grow companies in a much faster way, generating shareholder value in a much more lasting and long-term way, retaining customers, et cetera, et cetera. So if you think about that, that requires the CMO to be much more of a business operator, to understand capital allocation, to understand product
Mm,
development, to understand sales capacity, pipeline conversion. So I think it's requiring the CMO to bridge together abilities. And I'm not saying become, but I'm saying building a bridge to understand what's important to the CRO, what's important to the CEO, what's important to the COO. And usually in the past, you had CMOs more in their own field, which is running marketing, but running marketing for marketing
yeah.
or for sales instead of running marketing for the business as a way to take the business to the next level. And again,
Mm,
I'm not criticizing, I'm not judging. There's a lot of badass CMOs out there that are peers, that are mentors, huge respect. It's just how I see the world.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting. We've had a bunch of CMOs on, and it's some of the trends of late. We've seen folks that have come up through finance, have had a kind of a finance background, operations. A bunch of late through sales have been
Mm-hmm.
sellers, like, hey, and you have as well, which we'll talk about. Like, which is good. Like, hey, I get you, and I know what you need. Sales, right? I've been here. I'm not just some strategy guy up here. So it's interesting, and then there are so many different aspects to marketing today. So I guess, for example, there's data and analytics, there's creative, there's the demand gen. So I guess the question is, you know, do you come in as the kind of lead orchestrator with a specific focus and then start to hire pieces of some of those other areas that you're maybe not as deeply involved in or have been involved in, or what's kind of the strategy there?
I'm trying to think about an area that I haven't been involved over the last 15, 16 months. I think for us, this has been a complete rebuild of all of
Mm,
the areas. So from the fundamentals of marketing operations and what's the right lead criteria, the right ICP fit, the right data enrichment, to the lead routing, to the demand gen acquisition, to what's our brand narrative, strategy, storytelling, rebrand, to our PMM, ICP research, and how we're building full funnel content. So I think for me, which honestly is a blessing, I've been able to be all over and
mm,
help us retool all around, which
great.
gives me a pretty good 360 understanding of everything that we're doing. Am I an expert on all of that? No, of course not. But I've been able to participate, learn, grow, and influence all of that rebuild.
Mm,
So I think the where I see the CMO playing is my job is to be. If you think about a circle with all of these experts around me, my
hmm
job is to put them together, focused on the center of the circle, which is how do all of this aligns back to the business and aligns to where we're going, and also how can I be the provoking force that makes them think in a different way, makes them be more efficient, makes them get the messaging to the angle that I want on you, Mr. Customer, once takes us on a direction of becoming. I mean, we've dropped our acquisition cost by more than 50% on this last 12 months. So not only are we getting better on messaging, but we're getting more efficient, which takes our entire funnel up. So I think that where I see me playing is not only giving them the direction and aligning the C team and the company to go with them, but also being that force that helps all of them walk in the same direction. And
mm,
also, I'm a big believer in marketing needs to be fun. I don't wake up because I'm like, oh my God, I want to have a boring day. I enjoy meeting customers. I love what I
yeah,
do. So
yeah.
I also believe that the CMO has to be that cultural force. I might not be wearing the nicest sneakers or have the crazy haircut, but I believe that I need to step there and say, team, there's an angle of how we do things with the right energy, with the right
Mm,
way of
mm.
seeing things. That to me is really important.
Yeah, it's funny you said energy. I was about to say the same word. You have to, it's great. I love what you said. It's like you personally and the group needs to represent the brand,
Yes.
right? You're out there as building that brand and
Yeah.
you have to typify it in some way.
100%.
right?
And it's almost like people that know me. Sometimes I got a call the other day from another CMO, and he's like, "Dude, this is you." And then I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. This is so awesome." Because people that know you, they know how you are, and they're like, "I'm seeing the brand have some of that energy, some of that style." And again, one of the things that I put a lot of thought, I have my ego, but I like to manage my ego well. So it's not about me. It's about, of course, I'm the CMO, I'm the leader, I'll take the hit. But it's also about how are we operating as a team, and how myself plus all of our marketers become something that's larger than just Bruno. Um, and I think if you ask me, what was the most special moments that you felt since you've been here?
That's a great question.
I think it was when I felt that it's beyond me. Like the vision's there, the energy's there, and I'm like, this has a life of its own and is becoming something that's bigger than me. The day that I felt that, I took a step back and I'm like, I'm very proud of where this is going, because it's not about me. It's bigger than me. So I think that was probably one of the most special memories I had over the last couple months.
That's awesome. I love that. And when you think about kind of leadership and teams and all that good stuff, it really, the true good leaders are the ones that kind of, allow the team to kind of be able to pick themselves up, right? And support each other. And that's so great that you've been able to build that. In terms of the, we've interviewed a few CMOs. Some have had concerns about what they would call not having a seat at the table, the strategic table, and they felt like they were more executors. And there was even I think there might have been an HBR article on it, and they were talking about the disconnect between the CEOs today that many don't understand marketing, and then the CMOs who are trying to not be relegated to more executors. What's your thoughts on that? Do you see that in your travels, and then how does it work at 8x8 with you?
So when I was a small kid, my mom would say, and this also a very interesting fact about me personally. So every time that I had a bad test, let's say, oh, this is an F or this is a D, I would go to my mom and say, Mom, I don't think I did well, but hey, everyone else didn't do well either.
Yeah, you're
She
right.
would stop the conversation and say, I'm not everyone else's mom. This is about you, so you should take responsibility and own 100% of the situation. And that was the way she raised me. Every time something like this happens, for example, you just gave me the question. My internal reaction right there was like, yeah, I could say it's a CEO problem, and I think it is a CEO problem to some extent. But I think the way to reframe that is, what can the CMOs do to take more ownership and put the lenses or put themselves in a CEO shoes and say, well, he's worried about shareholder return, capital allocation, how can we grow faster? What are the how are we creating value wedges of competitive differentiation and things that will generate I think usually we were expecting the CEO to be that almighty that will understand marketing, that will understand product, that will that doesn't exist anymore. It's pretty hard. So I think that has been alienating CMOs that can talk and can bridge the gap to the other side. So I would put the responsibility on us to say, I need to understand what's relevant to my CEO, and I need to be able to monetize brand equity to him, or monetize marketing investment to him beyond pipeline, beyond bookings, beyond conversion, on share of voice, on brand building, on and is that easy? Hell no. But I think if you want to have a productive conversation, that's how you kind of go head to head, and you're able to level the playing field. Until you do, you're going to have CEOs that understand it and make it super easy, or CEOs that don't, and you're going to be alienated. And I'd rather be in control of what I can control and get some of that translation on my side instead of hoping that the other side needs to have or should have that.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer.
Not an easy one,
No.
but I think it's the right direction for us.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
the other thing is, the other
yeah.
question to ask here is why there's not a lot of CMOs that become presidents
Yeah.
and CEOs.
That's right.
And it's exactly because of this question.
That was part of the article too that they mentioned. It's a couple of years, but a year back, there's the short tenure, right? That, which I've been reading articles about that since I've been in and around the marketing space for a gazillion years. It's a year and a half. It's 2 years. It's slightly over 2. It just went up. It just went down a little bit. CROs are doing the same thing now too. It's, short tenure, but I thought that was a great answer. So let's pivot a little bit. You mentioned marketing as kind of the glue, which I really love. So talk about the orchestration, marketing with sales, and then I would imagine also success. How do you interact with both of those groups to kind of sew together almost like a seamless kind of go-to-market revenue team?
Yeah. So we were just talking about how in the more modern world today, the sales always happen before the actual sales cycle, right? So what's happening is the research cycle happens before actually the sales cycle, which in other words means we're always selling, right? We're always selling and we're always retaining. That's the kind of the way I like to see this.
Yeah.
People think we're selling is something you're on and off. You're actually always selling. And the same thing with customer success / retaining customers. I think for me, I like to lead a relationship with sales that's, first of all, super transparent on how are we as peers driving this relationship to be more productive for both of us. So we're not just throwing stuff over the fence. For example, I have here a lot of SDRs, it's a big SDR organization. So I instead of us tossing pipeline over the fence, there's a lot of thought on how do we do this together so it's better qualified and the prospect experience is much better when it hits a rep, if it needs a rep, or if it needs a multitude of reps, or are we bringing the right buying unit into the deal? So I think having the understanding that sales and marketing are not on and off. They're actually always on all along. There are periods where sales leads, there are periods where marketing leads. We should never get out of a deal until we actually retain that customer, renew that customer, sell more to that customer, which increases NRR to the company, which increases the valuation of the company. But I also think, going back to how I would answer this is a very specific way. I think you have to teach our organization to build the right relationships at all levels, to be in the deals, to build programs that are not programs for marketing. There are programs for sales for the company that can have customers that will fit customer success, that can have prospects that will fit sales. So I think the more you build the right programs from the ground up, from the bottoms up, and then from a leadership perspective, how you bring the CRO into the marketing organization, say, hey, we have a great relationship. We're doing this together. We're taking this business to the next level together. The same thing with our chief customer officer. How do we take better care of our customers? What drives value? What drives engagement? How do we bring them in? I think if we take those questions bottoms up and I think all the way down and really challenge the way to build those programs, I've seen success in that, and I think it builds a relationship of trust between the organizations. A lot of times you see sales fighting marketing, marketing fighting sales, customer success or support fighting each other. It's because I think they're focusing their own little boxes instead of aligning on the ultimate thing, which is the customer or the prospect.
100%. Do you think there's any reporting relationships that need to change to make this more effective, or is this just more about culture and team, leadership and working together?
It's a good question. I think yes. I think for this to work well, you got to have peer level relationships at the C level, and you got to have a CEO that goes to the team and says, says, I should say, the only thing that matters is the customer. We will take care of our customers. Since they're prospects all the way to their customers, we want them to be happy. We want to build a company that values customers, right? So I think if that exists from a CEO level, and then you have CMO reporting to CEO, CEO reporting to CRO reporting to CEO. If they're all peers, I think it works well. I think if you have the CMO reporting to the CRO, for example, it becomes
Yeah.
much harder. So I would say the change that needs to happen, the CMOs need to have a peer level relationship for this to be something that I think levels the playing field.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's interesting. There are a lot of these variability in who's reporting where, right? There's
But I also think at the end of the day, it's also about how, do you want to drive short-term value, long-term value? Like, how do you want to organize the company culture? Public companies are, of course, much harder because the guidance of this quarter is the guidance of this quarter, the guidance of this fiscal. So it forces you to have a much stronger operating performance on the current year, quarter, fiscal, whatever. So I think that will drive the C's to a shorter term view. So I think it's a good mix of reporting structure, but I don't think it's entirely. I would say it's 20% reporting structure, 80% on the view of how do we see the world.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's take a pause for a minute. Let's talk about your story. I'm always interested to learn about how people got to where they got to. Going back to the early days, you mentioned your mom and the tests and all that, and it brought back some stories for me too. But talk about, the very early days. What were your early kind of dreams and ambitions as a kid? And did it have any impact on kind of where you are today?
So I was always very, 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 very fixated on the stories. I used to be a big, my grandfather on my mom's side was a writer, book writer, movie writer. So I grew up
Wow.
with the luxury and the blessing of hearing great stories. He would say, this is the arc of this character. This is how it goes. Step back. This is the context of the story. This is the hero. This is what it means on the emotional angle. And so that on one side, coupled with my dad, who was an entrepreneur, who would say, we're selling lunch to buy dinner, guys, let's go. So I grew up between two very different universes of having the tremendous philosophical, historical storytelling layer of huge creativity, but with the reality of driving the day to day of like, we don't have money to buy a new PC because, we just don't have the money. So I think those two dualities gave me a lot of what I am today, which is I'm fascinated by the creativity, the storytelling, the emotional angle, but I'm also very, very focused on the operating or the operations of how do we get there? How do we grow the business? Is this the right investment, capital allocation, all of those things. So that's probably what made me this hybrid of both, I would say. It goes all the way to how I was raised, probably.
That's amazing. It's so interesting, that storytelling thing. I was watching, they had this 3-part series on CNN on Kobe Bryant, and it was talking about, which I forgot, like when he, unfortunately, with the Achilles injury and then he retired, he was like obsessed with storytelling. And he met with George Lucas from Star Wars and all these people, right? So I love that. That's great. So were you in the kind of entrepreneurial world with your dad as a kid, and what were kind of like some of your early jobs and your first real job?
So I was a big gamer growing up. Big nerd growing up. I loved, I loved computers. My first job was Linux gaming servers administration. So I would run the city gaming server. So we would all play the old online games. At that time, geez, I'm gonna date myself, but it was like Quake or something like that, early days. So that was my unofficial job. I used to enjoy that a lot. It was a lot of fun. My first real job was working with my dad. My dad had several businesses he was a marketer that got out. And when I was born, he's like, I don't want this corporate life. I'm going to be a farmer. So he basically said, bye corporate world. I'm going to be a farmer. I'm going to raise my family. So a lot of my entrepreneur stuff was with my dad, helping with stuff like fish farm, and that was one. Then we had coffee. Then we had all of these different things that would add up to his income and helping him with employee problems and money problems. Oh, we don't have the money. Let's refinance the car. So a lot of those struggles of
Wow.
I was born in Brazil, so and not from a ultra rich family or anything. So we had like money struggles in growing up. So I think that gave me a huge respect for money and for hard work. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, it's incredible. We had the chief growth officer on of Walmart in a kind of two-part series, and he and I were talking about like the paper route. He said having to shell out the money and then go collect, right? He felt was just so kind of pivotal for him as a young kid. And I understand it. A few people have said that. And then he really felt also that working in the restaurant business was really important for personal relationships, right? Because you get these nutty customers and there's pressure. And it's just interesting to me how these early jobs kind of set you on a path, right?
Because I was a nerd, I went to do computer science, which was the complete thing I should have never done because it's just programming. I like gaming. What the hell that has to do with that? So in the middle of school, I was going to quit. My mom said, don't do that. Go do a student exchange. We'll save money, sell a car, whatever, send you over. So I went to work for Disney as an international cast member living in Orlando at that time. So that was the trip that made me break through on the human angle and allowed me to just like see life in a different way. I think that not only on the language, but also on the people relations side, I learned so much out of that. I wouldn't be here if I was not.
Wow. Tell us more. How did, what was, when you think back, what were some of the experiences that really kind of made an impact for you? You think that kind of propelled you forward?
I think that the marketing training on how every customer that's there. So the way they would train you over on the Disney University for Business and Marketing at that time, and because we were internationals, they would give us a lot of love and a lot of like I had a coach that would give me body language training. So they invested on us like in a very special way, maybe because we were like it was harder to bring us over or something like that. But I remember being in training and they would say, you see, we were walking across the Magic Kingdom Park. They would say, you see these people walking there. You think they're just people. Every one of them probably is here because they're burning their life savings. So they spent years saving the money to be here. So when you approach them and you look them in the eye, think that they're looking at you after they saved 5 years to be here. So give them the respect that they deserve because of that.
Wow.
And the other thing that they would do, they would say, our job here is not to be in the way of them. Our job here is to open the way for them so that they can have the best experience possible. So some of these small things, they're so deep in me that like I think that's maybe where my customer, who am I to say that I'm like anything close to Disney or anything, but I think that created in me a respect for customers and for the experience, for the right way of doing things. I was never the same.
That's phenomenal. When you think about it, and it's invaluable. Some of these old training programs, there's not enough of them today.
And not only that, so we have a chief transformation and operations officer. His name is Joe Neeb, phenomenal guy. And we were talking about this, how people get trained today. And one of the things that he talks a lot about, and I'm quoting him because again, I think he deserves all the respect on that. Like on the 100% of how people are trained, like 70% is the experiential part that people get from doing the job, from seeing people in the eye, from learning from a mentor in
Mm,
a physical relationship. What
mhm,
have we prived people from over the last 3, 4, 5 years? Exactly the part that has the biggest amount of growth or learning potential. Not that the others are not important, the manual, the ebook, the training, and all of that, but they're not as strong as all of that, which you and I had. And I'm not saying this because I'm advocating office, non-office. Actually, I'm a hybrid guy. I work from home while I travel, while I go to the office. But I think the fact that people still need to be people, look themselves in the eye, shake hands, break bread. I think that kind of goes a long way into making who you are and you.
without a doubt. And you're right. There's the hybrid. There's the group of employees that came out in the pandemic, right? There was no there was no office, right? And then you have more generational differences where folks are growing up with phones and computers and so there's definitely big challenges, and I think it seems like there's not enough of those kind of old school programs, which really teach you the basics and then kind of get you out there. So um, hopefully there'll be more invested in that. But very interesting. So in terms of now making the leap into kind of management, right, and more of the senior marketing roles, what were some of the steps there leading you to kind of this job today?
Um, so I've had previous roles as global vice president of growth, helping companies kind
Mm,
of, grow and taking care of their global operations in multiple countries,
mm,
acquisition, and roles that were very close to sales and very close to customer as well.
mm-hmm,
But I was also I've been very good at being close to the bigger responsibilities, although they were not mine directly. I had lots of mentors of CMOs that would say, "Hey, I know you're doing this, but come take a look at this. Let me show you that."
mm-hmm,
When we were rebranding companies before, I've been a part of that multiple times. So it's almost like, and I joke that I was always kind of the unofficial CMO before I was an official CMO because I had access and I had the privilege of learning. Like, I didn't have the weight of the job, but I had access to the levers that they were pulling
mm,
and
mm,
access to their minds. They would say, "Yeah, my CEO is asking me this, or my CRO is saying that. This is my thinking." So um, I've been very blessed with good mentors. And I think I started having global roles that would take me closer to the business and where the business
mm,
was growing and where we were investing. And is this the right strategy? So I think it was more of a line around um, because I had global experience, because I had a lot of experience in sales, and I had a lot of experience in understanding how our customers transform and why they need technology for that. It was more kind of having the ability to articulate that strategy. The other thing that helped me a lot, I did a multitude of things in marketing. I've been a field marketing, I had digital, I've done
mm,
PR, I've led regions, I've led global
mm.
regions, I've done partners, I've rebranded companies before, I wrote storytelling, I presented in stages. So I think when I started putting all of that together and aligned that in a way to say, I think there's a framework on how Bruno sees the world to
Mhm.
help companies grow and build culture and build shareholder value and etc. That's when I'm like, I think it makes sense to be a CMO.
Mhm.
And I started looking for opportunities that not only a company would want a CMO, but would want a CMO that believes in the world the way I told you guys here that I believe, which is
Mm.
not an easy thing.
Yeah, I mean, the way you just articulated it was compelling. you know, um, you did have so many of these key attributes and experience right across these different disciplines within marketing, sales, growth. Right, you've been on the entrepreneurial side, branding, rebranding. So really, really interesting. Um, so talk a little bit about starting to manage people and how you've developed your leadership style, what that is. How do you keep the team firing on all cylinders? How do you handle issues? Just give us a kind of quick snapshot of your leadership style and experience.
Yeah. I come from a Latin background, right? You know that I was born in Brazil. So I come from a very warm cultural people angle, right? So,
Yeah.
and again, we got to be very careful. I'm not saying this is better than anything. But I'm saying I think people are the center of the equation, and I think we need to lead with people, but we need to lead with people in a warm human way. Um, so I'm a little bit of a mixture of I trust my people a lot. I believe that people have the ability to figure things out, but I also have very high expectations. So it's a little bit of like I
Mhm.
trust you, but my vision of where do we want to go is really really high, and it's also high with myself. I have high expectations of how I should show up. Am
Mhm.
I like I'm always the one that like I put a lot of effort on over preparing so I show up correctly, so we show up correctly, so I can be of I can serve my people with to the best of my ability. I can serve my company to the best of my ability. I can serve my family to the best of my ability. So remember going back to the fundamental, like you put the weight on you. So I always put the weight on me to say, how can I be a factor of people to feel that they're in an environment that they can give their best, that they want to overperform, that they want to achieve something, that they believe that they have a part to tell in the story that we're telling here. And I also I believe you can learn and get the skill. So you don't need the 100% of the skill, but you need 150% of the will. So I think
Mm.
if you balance between the two, especially in an AI driven world with the things that we're doing with AI, for example, skill is something that you can accelerate much faster. You still need very senior people, but you can accelerate much faster. Will and the
Mm.
ability to believe you can break through and that we can be the best at what we do and have high expectations, you can learn that, but that's a little bit harder. So that I would say those are some of the main components of how I see the world, and I like to lead by example. I like to, I take responsibility. It's I'll be the first one to take the hit before anyone else. This is not a culture of blame. I always say, if you got to blame someone, I'll take the blame. Blame is out of the equation. Let's focus on how do we solve this? How do we get better?
Mhm.
Um, I also I've had a lot of time leading global teams all over. So I think that diversity element of like, what do we learn from those different angles
Mhm.
of people, of languages? Like I speak a like English is not my first language. I've been here a long time, so yeah, I speak English more than anything else. But like, how do you put those things together gives you tremendous respect for people.
I love that. There's so many great things you said in there. But I do love the, you know, building that relationship and rapport, the trust, right? The vision, but the demands, like this is not an easy ride here, folks. There's going to be a lot of demands, but we're in it together. You've got tons of resources and backup and support and trust from the leadership. But we're all about outcomes, and we're going to make you better, right, along the way. And we're getting to know what motivates each and every one of those people. So I really love that. And I think culturally, you know, um, I think it helps a lot. We had Daniela Fleischmacher, the
Mm,
CMO of Kyndryl,
yeah,
on, and she comes from a non-American background, and she said, which was interesting, when she first moved into IBM in the U.S., she walked into a meeting and couldn't believe that people weren't social social with each other.
yeah.
Everyone was a little bit standoffish, and she's used to the warm engagement, with people. So I hear where you're coming from. I know we're getting a little tight on time. Um, so a couple of quick final questions. So looking back, anyone, mentor, anyone that really pushed you along the way that was pivotal when you look back on your road to this job that comes to mind?
I had very good mentors. And I would do a disservice if I named some of them here because I've been privileged to have
Mm,
mentors all along, and and I think this is good advice for people that are listening to us. First of all, sometimes you can get a mentor to be an official mentor that agrees to help you,
that's right.
but you can
Yeah.
also have an invisible mentor. I had an invisible mentor who's Fernando Machado, who was the Burger King CMO. He never agreed to it, but he mentors me anyways. I
Wow.
learn from him every day. I follow his stuff. Um,
Hmm.
and I think you can have the named and the unnamed. So always make sure you try to have both. I think that's good advice. Um, I think the other thing that's really important on that is whatever you're going through, what are the things that you want to learn? So, hey, I want to learn this from this mentor. And what are the things that you're like, I don't want to learn this from this person? You got to be very focused on what are the things you want to learn and the things that you don't want to learn. But
Hmm.
I think this is an opportunity for me to say thank you to my mentors and say I wouldn't be here
Mm.
without you. If you're seeing or listening to me here, you know who you are, or all of you. So thank you for that.
That's great. I love it. And it's a good point, right? It's the formal and informal, right? There are
Yes.
those that sign up, that you work with, right? And bounce ideas off of. And then there's just all those people out there, that you can glean different
Yeah.
things from. And, some things from some people, better things from, other people. And you start to put together, your own playbook. So I think it's great. And then, I do a lot of social media kind of, following different people. It's amazing today, Bruno. Like I'm thinking about the early days when it was like nothing.
Yeah.
You'd pick up the Dale Carnegie book, you know, and it's like, oh, this is great. Now it's literally just everywhere, right? So I think there's a great opportunity for all of us in business today to really perform at a high level and do a lot of kind of background work,
There's
just
um
following people, right?
there's a phrase that I always tell my people, which goes back, and I think it basically sums up a lot of the things that we spoke about, which defines my journey. Which defines my journey as a journey to a CMO. I think it defines our journey here at 8x8 as
Mm,
a kind of a CX software company growing and changing the market. I also think it defines the story of everyone that is growing. And it's all about the right attitude and the right angle. And the phrase is the following: is enjoy being while becoming.
mm,
I'll say that again because I think it's a very important one.
yeah.
Enjoy being while becoming, which I think if we can do that and use that energy to grow, to learn, to do better as a business, to do better as a person, it's not a bad life, man.
It's pretty good. And it's so relevant because it's just, you think about it. Enjoy being is something sometimes we just skip right over, right?
100%.
Because it's like, where are we going? What are we becoming? Where do we want to go? What numbers do we want to
Look
hit?
at my
And
post-it
it's like,
here. Joy.
yeah,
Note to self. Joy.
well, that's it. Have fun for God's sakes. And, it's like, if it's always something about where we're going, it's like we never arrive, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I was
Yeah.
talking about this with my son who's, kind of new in business. And he's just like, it's always about if I get to here and if I get to here and if I get to here. And it's like, no, just you'll get there. But like, let's enjoy being, which is what
Yes.
you're saying, which I think is really spot on. And it's something I have to remind myself too, because you get caught up in it, right? And it's like, oh my
We do.
gosh, you know?
We do. And if you think
Yeah,
about companies get so caught up in that they don't use the momentum to self-propel their own stories.
that's right. I really want to get, we definitely want to have you back. I want to do almost a deep dive on this whole storytelling notion. We could probably do a whole damn session on it,
That'd be
and
awesome.
you have such a great background in it. And so let's do that. But for now, we always end with we ask all of our guests, how do you define success?
It's a very, very good question. I think I look at success in a very easy metric. Are we getting better every day?
Mm.
Are we today better than where we were yesterday? Am I today better than where I was yesterday? Is my business today better than where it was yesterday? Are my people today better than they were yesterday? I think if you break that down into something that we can iterate, and of course, I have high expectations. I want to grow. You're gonna go 50%, 40%. We want to go crazy, but I think we got to make sure that we're looking at something that we can control instead of something that's so external that we're going to lose grasp of. So that's how I
Mm-hmm.
kind of maintain my pace. And I'm also
Mm-hmm.
very focused. I think if you have the right energy, it's contagious, right? So we got to make sure that we as leaders cut some of that crap, excuse my French or my Portuguese, and give people the right energy, give customers and
Yeah.
companies the right energy.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to set the tone as the
Yep.
leader, and it rubs off, one way or the other, and it
Yep.
better be the good way. So last question in terms of how people find you or get in touch if they want to. LinkedIn the best way or email? What's the best way to get in touch with Bruno?
I suck at email. I struggle tremendously with email. I use a
Got
lot
it.
of AI prioritization for my emails because I get a lot of. I'm very good at IM, so just go at LinkedIn, add me as a connection, follow me, send me a message. I'm very good at getting back and IMing. Any questions,
Awesome.
anything that I can be of service, happy to.
Awesome. Love it. We're right on time. Bruno Bertini, CMO of 8x8. What a great session. Thanks so much for joining us. We definitely want to have you back. And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will be back at it soon. Thanks for joining us today. Peace. Thanks for listening. Sales is King is a Dan Sixsmith production. Please subscribe to be notified of new episodes featuring more C-level executives and influencers, and follow Dan on LinkedIn.